Well, former President Donald Trump's legal woes back in the spotlight this week in dramatic testimony occurring this week in a New York City courtroom. The civil case involving longtime advice columnist E. Jean Carroll. She took the stand claiming the former president raped her in a fitting room at an upscale Manhattan department store back in the 1990s. The lawsuit is also accusing Trump of defaming Carroll after he publicly denied her rape allegation. Joining us now to discuss and break down this case is our legal panel. First, constitutional law attorney and former prosecutor and Newsmax contributor Amir Benno. Also with us is distinguished professor at Touro University, Thane Rosenbaum. And of course, finally, our special guest, Newsmax contributor Deneen Borelli. All right, thank you all for joining us. Amir, I'd like to start with you first. As someone with plenty of experience as a prosecutor, does Carroll have a case here, especially given the fact she can't seem to remember the month, the season, or the year that this alleged assault took place? We're now 25 plus years removed from it. What kind of case does she have?
Well, I do think she has a case, and what you raise are obviously going to be things that the jury's going to have to consider when they determine whether she's credible or she's not, whether they can believe that this happened. And the concern, of course, is that they're going to be essentially trying Donald Trump on what's known as propensity evidence, which is if you've committed an offense in the past and they have some other people who've come up 20, 40 years ago saying that he groped them or he forced a kiss on them, and they're going to introduce that testimony to say that he sort of acted in conformity with those kind of tendencies in the case with E. Jean Carroll. Generally speaking, that kind of evidence is not allowed in court. But the federal rules of evidence when it comes to sexual assault cases does allow that. So this is an unusual circumstance just because that kind of evidence is going to come in. But definitely she does have a case, and I think there's a lot of risk for the former president here.
Well, Amir and Thane, it's great to see you on this Saturday afternoon. Thane, this is, of course, a civil case, meaning whatever happens, Trump won't face jail time. Do you believe this case is motivated purely by money, or is this just another political distraction against the former president as he looks ahead to 2024?
Well, remember, Carroll took a risk here to make this so public. She's an individual. She admits she's not a fan of Donald Trump, of course. But the only reason this case is here, normally something like this would have been time barred by the statute of limitations. But there's a new law in New York that granted a one-year window from November of 2022 to November of 2023 that says if you're a victim of sexual assault before the statute of limitations would run, you could still bring such a lawsuit during this window of opportunity. The problem is, she's really bringing a defamation case, that he lied about her, that he never touched her, she's not his type, this is a lie. But the only evidence of the lie is the rape. So then, therefore, she has to prove a rape. But because this took place so many years ago, this is not a victim-friendly rape scenario, like, a assailant brandishing a knife, pulling a woman into a bush, leaving DNA evidence all over the place. The woman is taken to a hospital. There's a rape kit. Here you have, two social equals in the most lavish department store in New York City. And there's no physical evidence of the crime. I mean, the standard problems. She's bringing two cases, rape and defamation, which are the two most difficult cases to bring in an American courtroom, which is really interesting, which makes you think, Deneen, that maybe something else is happening here, because it's not a particularly great case. It's not without risk to the former president, but based on the staleness of the evidence. That's why we have a statute of limitations. The legal system takes a position. Every year that goes by, the evidence becomes more stale. What she does have in her favor, we learned this with the criminal indictment of Donald Trump, is Manhattan has a very unfriendly jury pool for Donald Trump. And in no doubt, the jurors were probably sympathetic to Carroll.
Yeah, one of the reasons why the Trump attorneys in the criminal case want that jury pool to be moved to either Staten Island or upstate New York. They want to seek a new location. Amir, I'd like to turn now to Florida, where the Walt Disney Company is suing Governor Ron DeSantis this week, alleging that a Republican governor has, quote, waged a relentless campaign to weaponize government power in the state to hurt their business. Amir, walk us through this case. Do you see, I mean, a lot of folks say, look, Disney, they were given this special access 50 plus years ago in order to kind of entice them to come to Florida, but this was always just at the will of the government there in Florida. So does the governor taking away these special privileges, does this warrant a lawsuit?
So this is a really interesting case. So there's a number of claims Disney is raising. And what essentially happened here is Disney decided to speak out on the parental rights and education bill that was mislabeled as Don't Say Gay last year, that Don't Say Gay bill. And they waded into that political fray. And essentially what happened is DeSantis then said, you know, Disney has had this privilege, like you said, for 50 years to govern itself, this special district down that surrounds Disney World. And essentially it's a county unto itself, and they run it. And so DeSantis said, well, I'm going to take that away from you at this point. Originally, he was just going to eliminate it entirely. But what ultimately happened is he decided to put his own individuals, appointees, in to run that district, as opposed to the people who were put in there by Disney, which he did. But when right before he did that, Disney had entered into a number of contracts for 30 years that essentially limited what DeSantis and the state's individuals could do. It was land use agreements, so Disney protected itself. DeSantis said, well, that didn't fly with him, and ultimately just canceled that contract almost unilaterally. And that's what prompted this lawsuit, where Disney is saying, first of all, you're retaliating against the company for exercising its First Amendment right in speaking out against a bill that it didn't agree with. Second, you're violating something known as the Contracts Clause, which is a constitutional provision that stops the government from interfering in private contracts. Third, it said that you're violating the Takings Clause, which means that the government can't take your property without just compensation. And then finally, the Due Process Clause. The one that's gotten the most attention is the First Amendment, but really that's probably the weakest of their claims, and it's the last claim that they assert in their complaint. The strongest argument here is really that contract clause provision, and I think when the analysis is done, Disney, as much as we don't like their woke politics, they're on the right side of the law on this one.
Thane, really quick, does Disney have a case here?
I think they do. I do. But I remember the position that DeSantis is taking and should be taking is you don't have a constitutional right to receive special tax and business privileges in New York. I mean, in Florida. We have all kinds of other businesses in Orlando that don't benefit from these special kinds of self-governing provisions. Yeah. So and essentially what you're really saying is once we gave this to you, we can't ever take it away from you. And that seems to be an untenable position, since we're answerable to the citizens of Florida, and the citizens of Florida are opposed to your position with respect to the Parental Rights Act. Yeah, so I think Florida's position is simply saying what you're claiming is something that was a privilege we gave you, but we're permitted to take it back. Yeah,
you wonder if NBC Universal owns Universal Studios, also right next door to Walt Disney World, if they'd like to have some of those special privileges and provisions for the next 50 years. Both gentlemen, thank you both for joining us. Amir Benno and Thane Rosenbaum. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.